So now we're going to talk about the strategic planning process as a whole. We're going to do a broad overview of the different components that'll lead you into the steps and the questions you need to ask you, yourself, and your team about how to create your organizational strategy. After this, each section will have its own video to walk you through the individual steps on how to create the strategic plan with your team. So, as an overview, let's talk about getting started, some of the things that you need to do to ensure an effective strategic planning process and an effective strategic planning session with your team, the inputs that go into creating your strategic plan. We have VMOS, which is an acronym for vision, mission, objectives, strategies, and tactics. So it's a methodology that we use on how to create a strategy for a team. KPIs, key performance indicators. How are you going to measure and track your success? Communication, some tips on communicating the plan and what you need to do to get the plan out there once it's done. The importance of getting alignment as an organization and as a team. Different risks, how to identify them, how to mitigate them, and then a little bit on implementation. What are you going to do now that you have this plan? So, first things first, why are you doing strategic planning in the first place? What inspired you to go on this journey and invest the resources into excuse me. So, are you trying to allocate resources more effectively? Are you trying to focus on specific initiatives within your organization? Maybe you have specific challenges that you're trying to address to create better focus within your organization, to create better alignment within your organization, to change the direction of where you're going currently, to deal with competitors, new or existing. Possibly you're merging companies together, merging different organizations, and now you need to create a unified strategy. Or maybe simply planning is in your company DNA, and this is just something you do. So now that you have a reason for doing the strategic planning session, who is going to be part of it? Are you going to bring in some stakeholders to give their opinions? Senior leaders, CEO or otherwise? Frontline employees, the people that are executing on the strategy on a day-to-day basis, they're the ones taking marching orders and leadership from above, and they have really, really good insights on how that organization and how the company works on a day-to-day basis. So having a good mix of senior leaders and frontline employees can be valuable. And then middle management, the link between the two. Whose feedback are you going to take in as part of this process? So the more people you add, the richer the conversations become, but the process also gets more complex. So we say that about 7 to 10 people is an ideal planning session. Once you get more than 10 to 15, then it becomes a little bit more complicated just to make sure everybody has airtime to voice their concerns. And then if you're going to do something more than that, then you really have to have a specialized agenda and some team building things in place to get everybody's feedback in an effective way. So how are you actually going to implement this? Are you going to do it off-site or on-site? If you're doing strategic planning, we always recommend doing off-site if you can, only because it gives people a different perspective and a different mental clarity. It will help them think outside of their normal day-to-day, and it'll, I say like a treat, but it's really more effective for the session. Will you do it in a half day, a full day, or 2 or 3 days? Once a quarter, once a week, once a year. Some organizations do a stand-up strategy meeting for 7 minutes every day, and some people do strategic planning once every 3 years. So it really depends on your organization and what you feel is best, and of course, a consultant like us can definitely help guide you in the process. Who creates the agenda? Having an agenda for planning session is key because it's very, very easy to get lost in thoughts when you're thinking at high-level overviews and high-level plans. So it's important to focus on very specific issues with timelines attached, and then you can see our 2-day planning agenda that we've created for you as well. What are the objectives? What are you hoping to achieve during your time together? And what are you hoping to walk away with as far as plan-wise, or at least some information? And are there team building activities built in? Because forming and storming the group, even if they work together on a day-to-day basis, getting people in the mindset and in the collaborative mode to work together is extremely important for the efficacy of the planning session. So now we're getting right into the process. First things first, start off slow. Whether they're new to planning or not, you're going to be working together for a few days, And it's important to start bonding the team and making sure that everybody is on the same page communication wise and they're ready to participate. Take time to break the ice and create a connection between the participants. It'll help the flow of the session and it will create richer results as far as your strategic plan. Celebrate your success. Take time to recognize where the organization has come from to get to this moment. It means that you could easily jump in and say, we have this problem, we have this problem, and we have this problem. But if you don't take time to celebrate the successes and celebrate the strengths of the organization, how did we get to this point and what have we done well? It's going to set a negative tone for the time, and it won't be as productive as saying, here's what we've done really, really well, and we're hoping to build on that success in the future. Obviously, there will be things that you're less than happy with, but it's important to start from a place of strength. So, the strategic planning process. Start with getting feedback. Creating a plan is built on the information that you have. So the richer the amount of information that you have, the more comprehensive a plan you can make. So how do you solicit feedback within your organization? Well, there's several ways. You can use surveys. We do a pre-planning survey before all of our engagements, and then we send that organization-wide if it's small organizations, or to key leaders if it's a bigger organization. You can hold meetings to solicit feedback, stakeholder engagement meetings or regular meetings internally. You can do offsite sessions. You could do a planning session just to do feedback or something like a town hall, especially if you're trying to reach out to your customers or other stakeholders. And there are many other ways. What systems does your organization use? You might do something like a coffee morning where you just get staff in to discuss, or you could have a feedback box that operates at all times, or a Slack channel, or some sort of other internet-based tool to solicit feedback from your customers and stakeholders. So all of those pieces, those inputs, will help guide your planning and direction from a stakeholder perspective. But now we're going to look at the different inputs that go together for your organization, both internally and externally. So first we want to start with an external analysis. That's looking at the world outside of your organization to figure out what's happening out there. And then we can make our plans internally in function of that. So the first tool that we use is a SWOT analysis. It's very, very simple and basic, but very valuable. Evaluating the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats that are happening in your organization. So strengths and weaknesses are internal, and opportunities and threats are external. And some of the threats can actually be internal as well. And so we'll cover that in a separate video. And then another tool that's useful is called a pestle analysis, looking at trends in the outside environment. So political trends, economical trends, societal trends, technological trends, legal trends, and environmental trends. And your organization is basically assessing what those might be in the future and how they might impact your organization. And we have a video covering that later, so be sure to check that out. And then internal analysis. Stakeholder and management team inputs. As we mentioned before, getting information from different people that are important to you inside the organization will be extremely valuable. And this process, you'll go through this process with your team, so they will be able to contribute to the SWOT and the pestle, as well as distilling and analyzing the stakeholder and other management team inputs. So, as we mentioned, the SWOT analysis. So strengths. What do you do well in your organization? What are the things that you've built your successes on? We'll talk later about a capability built strategy, but this is really building on your strengths to continue your success. Conversely, your weaknesses are things that you do less well. You're more likely to improve on your successes than shoring up your weaknesses, but it's also important to identify them as part of your strategic plan. Some weaknesses might be okay as they are, whereas some weaknesses might actually be critical risks and critical challenges to your success in the future. And this is the first opportunity that you'll get to identify them without having to risk sounding pessimistic. It's being a real critical assessment of the organization to figure out where you can improve and where you can build a better foundation for the future. Opportunities, those are both internal and external. What opportunities do you see as an organization to create success in the future? These could be trends, these could be building on your strengths, they could be business opportunities, they can be pretty much anything, as long as it's an opportunity for your organization in the future. On the other side of the coin, threats. What are things that are going to hurt your organization in the future that you need to be aware of and need to make a plan to mitigate? And these can come across the gamut from competitors, could be from bottlenecks, they could stem from weaknesses. There's no right or wrong when it comes to threats. The important part is to identify them and to identify them as comprehensively as possible so you don't get blindsided by something that you weren't able to prepare for. So now we're going to look a bit outside the organization and do a pestle analysis. So this is looking at the economic climate and figuring out, I say economic climate, the environmental climate outside, and seeing what are some of the things in the world that are happening now or happening in the future that we need to be aware of that is going to affect how we do business. So high level overview, political, what trends in policy and politics are going to affect us. So whether that's your own government, regional, municipal, state, or country, or it could be a political climate in a country that you do business in or that affects you or your stakeholders. Economical, the currencies or debt or anything that has to do with money that affects either you or your stakeholders or your clients. So this is a way to say, well, this is going to happen in the future. This may happen in the future in the regards to economy, and here's how it might affect our stakeholders. If you can predict the future better, that it will help guide your plans and get ahead of the trends, again, instead of being caught behind the eight ball and reacting to those trends. We'll talk about risk analysis later and scenario planning that will help give you a more in-depth tool on what to do with these trends. Societal trends are what's happening with people, what are their consumer preferences, and how are they going to affect how you do business, how are they going to affect your customers, and how are they going to affect your stakeholders. Technological changes is the same thing. What changes in technology are going to affect how you run your business? Maybe it might be software or opportunities that you can use to decrease the costs. Or it could mean that technology is getting easier and there are less barriers to entry for other people and could possibly mean disruption for your industry. Legal, what changes in laws may affect how you do business or how your customers do business. Obviously, it could be positive or negative. They could ratify some bill that stops the way you do business, or just simply change something, which means you have to change a process and be ready for it. So identifying them ahead of time will help you build a better strategic plan. Environmental, what's happening in the environment, nature, that might affect the way you do business. So global warming or climate change might be one. If there was a natural disaster in your country or a country that you're doing business with, how will that affect things? Or even just resources, a depletion of resources might affect you if you're in the farming business, or it might be one of your raw inputs, or a variety of other factors. So at least planning on that as part of your strategic plan will help you build a more robust plan. We're going to talk about building a capability-driven strategy as part of your internal analysis. So what that means is building on your strengths to create a competitive advantage that will give you a long-term sustainable advantage and benefit over your competitors. So it's not to say that the world is a zero-sum game and not everybody can flourish, but it's also important to note that in competitive environments, this is a strategy and these are tactics that you can implement to create differentiation and an advantage. So first, we're going to identify the core competencies of your organization, which are the things that you're good at. So we analyze that as part of your SWOT. What are your strengths? Now we're going to look at competitive advantage, which is as simple as what are you better at than everybody else? Everybody has strengths and everybody has a competitive advantage. The hard part is determining what that is relative to your competitors or substitutes. So we're going to take those strengths and competitive advantages, and then we're going to put them through the VERO framework. Now, VERO stands for valuable, imitable, rare, and organizationally deployed. And another way to use this is VERIN, which means non-substitutable. So the two go together and complement. So a valuable competitive advantage, a valuable strength, is table stakes. It's the ante. It's the basic thing that you need to bring to the table for people to care about it. Valuable strategies are table stakes, as I mentioned. That's just the basic. So imitable, or rather non-imitable. Can your competitors imitate the thing that you're doing? Have you ever noticed that when organizations or companies do something well, that they do it well for a while alone, and then eventually other people copy them because it's a good idea? When you're the first mover to do that strategy, you have a short-term advantage. And then when people imitate you and copy you, there goes your benefit. So valuable and hard to imitate competitive advantages and strengths will be a short-term advantage. So the ideal is creating something that's both or all three valuable, hard to imitate, and rare. Rare means that it takes a lot of time, resources, and money for your competitors to duplicate, and you can build levels of complexity within your organization to stop people from copying what you're doing, or at least slow them down as best as possible. Valuable, rare, and hard to imitate will result in long-term advantage. So the last piece, organization, is the firm organized to implement the strategy? You might have something proprietary at the top. Your CEO or your vice president might have partnerships with people. They might have specific intelligence. They might have patents. But is the entire firm capable of replicating that solution firm-wide? If you can, then you have a long-term sustainable competitive advantage. If the competitive advantage is stuck at a level of organization, then that might not be something that you want to base your strategy on, because it is highly dependent on that one person or on that one functional area that can't get out of there. The other piece that I'll mention now is not on the slide deck. It's in non-substitutable. If you have some benefit that's to your customers, can they substitute it with something else? Is there an alternative for them as part of the key value that you're offering? If there is no substitute, then you have a long-term sustainable competitive advantage. And if there is, well, you don't have one. So can you create something that's valuable, imitable, rare, non-substitutable, and deployable throughout the organization? And if so, you will enjoy success for a very long time. So now we're going to look at, very briefly, monitoring external forces a bit more. And this is really when you're looking at entering a new market or evaluating a market for innovation for a different product or even for a new business. You want to look at these 5 forces and just identify the bargaining power of suppliers. How much power do suppliers wield in this new business or in this current business? And they might change over time. Do the customers hold a significant level of bargaining power? That could be because they run the industry and they're the one who actually control the selling at the end of the day, versus you as a company having more supply than there is demand. Threat of new entrants. Are you in an organization, are you in a business that has a high threat of new entrants? And do you always need to be on the lookout for what's happening next? If so, you should make strategic planning a higher priority and definitely identify those new entrants as they come in. As I mentioned before, threat of substitute products. Is there something that can wash away your margins or wash away your impact quickly because threat of substitute products is high? If there are no substitute products, then you're probably in a better market and easier to operate in with higher margins. And then all of those things go together and complement the competitive rivalry within an industry. Are you in a competitive marketplace or not? Whether you're a not-for-profit or a for-profit organization, you probably have some level of competition, and it's important to identify that in function of all of these factors. Is there anything we're missing? And this is an opportunity in your organization to say, we have organizational specific areas that we need to address. Maybe IT is a problem. Maybe our fulfillment is a problem. Maybe fundraising is a problem. Maybe locally we're facing this issue with this human being or this other organization, and we need to create a plan to mitigate and identify it. This is a time where you can brain dump other issues that are on the minds of the people in your organization. When we build out surveys as part of our strategic planning process, we always include this question. And what's really valuable is when we send it out to participants that are or people that are not participating in the strategic planning session, we get a lot of rich feedback as to things that are on their minds. And that's why getting good impacts or inputs is important, because you can see what people are concerned about. And it might even be something like job security. It might be something about communication. And it might be bottlenecks in the organization that if you only stick to the top with the management, you think everything is fine. But you're not getting a good cross-section of your stakeholders, of your employees, that'll really give you insights as to what things are really affecting your organization now and what will affect them in the future. So now we're going to talk about vision, mission, goals, objectives, strategy, and tactics. So this is the VMOS pyramid. This is the foundation of strategic planning. As you can see, they are all in line, and that's because they all contribute to one another. The vision starts at the top. Where are you going? The mission contributes to the vision. The goals and objectives contribute to the mission or your purpose, which then contribute to your vision. Your strategies are what you're actually going to do to accomplish your goals and objectives that are going to help you accomplish your purpose, that are going to lead to your vision. And finally, the tactics are the individual things you're going to do that are bundled together as part of strategies that lead up to goals and objectives that help you achieve your purpose and that accomplish your long-term vision. So it's really important that all of these things are in alignment and all contribute to another. If you are a nonprofit organization or a mission-based organization, your mission might be at the top and your vision might be here, but typically this is a good setup for most organizations. So now we're going to get into creating your strategic plan built on the future, the desired future of your company and your organization. Then the most important thing is vision. Where do you want to be at some point in the future? Where are you going? This is really blue sky thinking, but it should also be rooted in something that's actually achievable. But what's most important is, where do you want the organization to be in the future? When we talk with organizations and build this process out, everybody has a different vision of the future. And we encourage everybody to write their vision and then share it with the group and then try to create a unified and aligned vision over time. Another way to think about it is, if success was a place, how would you know if you got there? So where are you going? Why should you go there? And what is winning? So some of the things you can think about is, where do you see your organization in 3 to 5 years? What about in 10 to 25 years? What is a big goal that could polarize your team? What's one big target that everyone in the organization can contribute to? A vision should excite not only the people in your team, but stakeholders and customers as well. You can use it as a tool to attract good employees, and you can use it as a tool to attract customers as well. A vision is a very, very powerful thing that stands as a rallying point for everybody in the company. And having an effective vision, sometimes people might not get behind it, and it's a really good tool to get people out of your organization if they're not going to the same place you want to go. So a key piece of this is getting your team to describe their vision of the organization as clearly and as vividly as possible. So what do operations look like? What does staff look like? What do clients look like? How else does an organization look different? And think of it like a blueprint for your house. You're building the design here. Everything that you're doing, this is the future plans for your company. And it all starts with, what do we want the future to look like? So if the future was a place, if success was a place in the future, what would it look like and how would we know if we got there? And then we'll describe how to create a vision statement and go over some sample vision statements later on. So when we talk about vision, there's two things you can look at. Now, this is the blue ocean and red ocean strategy. A red ocean is an area that is expensive and challenging to be successful in, lots of competitors. And it's important when you're going through the visioning process with your team to realize that you can go into something that's called the blue ocean, a new industry, a new market, new opportunities, an area that's spurred by innovation and or disruption. So encourage your people to think with innovation, because those are the organizations that are being successful, are the ones that are doing something differently and not following the pack. So, mission and purpose, the second part of the VMOS pyramid. What do you do? Why do you do it? Why do you exist? Why is the world a better place for having your organization in it? It's really useful to say, understand this, and saying, if you do this, how is it going to contribute to your vision? How do you accomplish your vision? What is your purpose? Who is your main customer? And also, who is not your customer? What do you do for them? And what differentiates you, your value, from your competition? And if you can include all of this in a mission statement, especially the part about the core customers, then you have built a good mission statement, and it will help, again, contribute to your vision and also act as a rallying point for your company, for people to know exactly why they're coming to work and why they're doing what they're doing. Why do you exist? Who do you do it for? Who is your main customer, and what do you do for them? Some questions to ask yourself as you're building your mission statement. And again, mission statements change over time. There are a lot of companies and a lot of organizations who were stuck in old visions and stuck in old missions who aren't here anymore. And with the pace of innovation and the pace of change, it's important to frequently review your strategic plan and your strategic planning process to make sure that your purpose, the reason for your organization's being, is still current and still relevant to the business operation you're in now. A lot of organizations started in one business and then went through the strategic planning process and realized that there are other opportunities in other markets, and as such changed their mission and changed their purpose for the better. So who is your customer? I know some people might have been thinking, well, we don't have customers, or we have more than one customer. Well, question I ask is, if you could focus the bulk of your energy serving one key customer, who would it be? Is it stakeholders? Is it clients? Is it shareholders, suppliers, government, or other? Johnson & Johnson, their mission, their credo, has 4 core customers, and that's totally fine. What's important to note is that you pick and identify the customers that you serve, and then figure out what you do for them on a customer basis. So next, we'll talk about values. And it wasn't actually on the agenda, but this is what a lot of VCs and people say is the most important part of an organization. And the strategic planning process is a time to identify the organizational values, what people care about within the organization, and what the organization is about. Most organizational values start from the CEO or the founder. And then over time, as more people grow into the company, the values of the organization shift and draw from the people within it. And that really is endemic of what's the DNA of the organization? What do people value? What do people care about? And what are the cultures and the norms of the organization? Values are extremely valuable and useful because it serves as an in or out statement for people. It's, well, what is acceptable? So, how is the way we do things around here? What is not acceptable behavior? We value this. So anything else is outside of alignment with our organization and is not a good fit. So take some time to identify the values, the things that are important to your organization, and what are the way we do things around here? What do people care about? And a lot of people talk about customer service and integrity and family and responsibility. And I would challenge you to look at those words, a lot of people call them buzzwords, and say, how do you live them as part of your organization? Do you say that, or do you really live integrity? Do you really live customer service? Do you really embody family values? What are the things that you do actively? Where do you put your money, and where do you reward the values as part of your organization to encourage people to live those values on a day-to-day basis? Values can, again, be very useful in attracting new employees, attracting customers, and creating a culture of high performance and success. The other important part is really identifying the values that you live and standing by those ones, and maybe getting rid of some of the ones that you say but you don't actually do anything about. So one thing to think about when it comes to values and building on that is, what does your company promise? So it goes back to that integrity of your values. What can people expect from your organization 100% of the time? And then it should apply to everybody. This is just a little aside from the strategic plan, but if you have a company promise, it really allows your people to be empowered to make decisions, to say, this is what we can do, and we know that we're supported in doing it 100% of the time. Values, statement of behavior, it's, we live by this, and if I do this, if I live by the values, I'm going to be okay. And it empowers people to make decisions because it serves as an in or out statement in regards to what is acceptable behavior, what can I do, and what am I encouraged to do. So we talked about vision, we talked about mission, we talked about values, and we want all of those things to be aligned with the objectives, the strategies, and tactics. The vision is where your organization is going to go in the future. Your mission is how it goes there. Your values are important in the middle here, and they support the achievement of your mission and vision. And now we're getting into the how do we actually do it, and how do we measure that strategy with our purpose. So we're going to talk a bit about setting goals. Okay, so there's a lot of different methodologies for setting goals, but you can look at it as 3 to 5 year goals. You can look at 1 year goals, or you could look at it as quarterly goals, weekly goals. You could do sprints, or you could do 25 to 50 year goals. There's no right way to do it, but I'm going to share the methodology that we suggest on how to become more effective in actually achieving those goals. Before we do that, I just want to talk about strategy a little bit. Of course, we just jumped into the strategic planning process, but we didn't really talk about strategy. So strategy itself is about choices. As an organization, you can do tons of things. You could do all the things. Strategy is about choosing what not to do. And the reason we choose what not to do is because when we know what our vision is, we're only going to do the things that contribute to the vision of the organization. So I'm going to make sure I repeat that just for emphasis, because this is really important. When you know where you're going as an organization, it serves as a guiding stick for all of the decisions that you make. So when you're setting goals or you're creating strategies, you want to create goals and strategies that are going to contribute to your vision. And if they don't do them. This might seem obvious to some, but to others, they get involved in so many different projects and so many different objectives and goals that a lot of them don't take you to that true north point, take you to your vision at the end of the day, and you spend unnecessary money and time on useless projects. So what are the most important things you should be doing to achieve your organizational vision? So I'm going to share something real quick. I put this in because it's a little personal story about me. Is I'm a Leo, and as an entrepreneur, I always try to do a lot of things. And I found this picture and this story very interesting. So for those of you that might not know, this is what we'll call a lion tamer, this gentleman here with a whip and a chair. And so the story goes is that the reason that they have a chair is because the lion tries to focus on all 4 points of the chair at once. And what it ends up doing is he gets paralyzed in trying to focus on all 4 points instead of just one, and actually ends up being a lot less effective in what he's trying to do. So why I think that's important to strategy is that organizations try to focus on so many points at once, or teams try to focus on so many points at once, that they're a lot less effective with their strategies if they actually focused on one individual assignment or one individual goal or tactic or strategy. Of course, sometimes a broad-based approach is important, but it's also important not to dilute your efforts moving forward. So we're going to talk about goals and objectives here. So goals are generic themes that support accomplishment of the mission, whereas objectives are specific and measurable that contribute to the moving of the needle on goals. So we're going to think of moving from X to Y by date. Strategies and tactics are done on the implementation level to accomplish the objective. What is all of this? We'll look at goals as generic themes. It's What are the broad statements that we're going to make to help give us direction in the future? Objectives are going to lead to those goals, but they're going to be measurable. We're going to know that we're trying to increase sales from X to Y by date. We're going to reduce customer returns from X to Y by date. And I say X to Y obviously as numbers that you can put in. Strategies and tactics are the things that you're going to do to move the needle from X to Y. They're going to help you accomplish the goal of increasing customer satisfaction, reducing turnover, growing headcount, reducing headcount, improving morale, selling more, expanding into international markets, and so on. Expanding into international markets is not a smart goal, but it does give direction in the future. So another way to think about it is strategic intent. Headlines are themes on how you're going to execute your strategy. We want to make the strategy as easy to understand and to execute as possible. So that's why we do strategic intent and strategic headlines to give staff who might not be privy to the whole strategic plan or the whole strategic planning process easy to understand words on how to implement their plan. Tagline, so to speak. And I use the word broadly specific areas of focus. Think of New Year's resolutions. It makes it easy to communicate and focuses action. So here's a visual representation. You'll have this as part of your pack. Look at the vision. We look at the mission, the purpose, and then we start looking at these goals here, which are our strategic themes. We don't recommend having more than 3 or 5 goals that you're working on. And again, one primary goal. But these strategic themes are going to help you achieve your purpose and achieve your vision. Underneath here, the specific objectives and initiatives, that's those things that you're going to do that are measurable. And those are the individual things you're going to do on a day-to-day basis that is going to contribute to moving the needle on the objectives, accomplishing these goals, which is going to help you accomplish your purpose and accomplish your vision. Another way to look at it is written on a Word document. And the same thing, goals go here, they accomplish the mission, and they accomplish the vision. Again, all of these things are in line, and they are in line with a specific purpose. So we're going to talk about KPIs. So KPIs are the measures and targets that go into your business. They're the critical measures or ratios that how you measure success. So when you talk about that X and Y by date, those are KPIs. What are the things that you can measure that are actively going to track your progress towards accomplishing your goals, accomplishing your mission, accomplishing your vision? So another way to think about it is, how do you measure success? What key ratios exist in your business? Maybe it's turnover ratio. Maybe it's cash flow utilization. It could be, net promoter score. It could be a lot of things on how you measure success, and it's different for every organization and every strategy. But the things that you measure are the things that are going to drive your strategy. So creating good KPIs that are indicative of your goals is super, super important. What is the most important ratio or the most important measure in your business? Because what that is and what gets measured, as Peter Drucker famously said, gets managed. It's the things that your employees are going to focus on as their measure of success. So make sure you take the time to spend a good one. Another way to look at it, this is the balanced scorecard. There's a lot of people who think, we do things that are financial. And the balanced scorecard overview, you have your objectives, the things that you're trying to do, the measures, how are you actually going to measure it, the targets, what is that end goal, that finish line, and the initiative, the specific things on a day-to-day basis that are going to move the needle on the target and help you accomplish your objectives. So again, everything is in line. But it's also important to note that you don't just do things financially. You do things to support your customer. You do things to build internal business processes. And you also do learning and growth activities to support your organization. So all of these things contribute to your vision and apply to your strategy. So it's important that when you're creating KPIs and creating strategies that you look outside of financial metrics to create success for your vision and strategy. Another way to look at it, so going back here, we talked about the financial, we talked about all of these, but how do they contribute to one another? So another way that we distill that here is, if we improve our organizational capacity, then it will impact our financial metrics. if we improve our processes, we will improve our customer satisfaction, which will ultimately lead to financial. Financial is not the end all be all, but when you're looking at building budgets and building resource allocation programs, then it does start with the finances. So, on the other hand, if we want to improve organization capacity, what do we need to do from the financial side to make that happen? If we're trying to improve our processes, well, something is going to give from the customer side and again, that financial side. So if we want to do this, then we have to change this, or this will be affected. And then how do we improve these things? And it is, as I mentioned here, a loop. All of the things go together and all of the things contribute to your vision and strategy. So going back to the strategic map, we're looking at the KPIs here. The objectives of your strategic themes go here. Moving from X to Y by date. And then tactics. What are the individual things that you're going to do? We're going to work on the website. We're going to increase conversion path. We're going to survey our customers. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. Make these changes. And these are the things that you start to do that help you achieve your objectives, that help you meet your goals, and help you meet your vision. So this is different for every organization, and it's different in different levels of the organization. So you might have an organizational level vision and mission and goals, which is great, and that's why they're on two separate papers. The vision and goals should be organization-wide, but then having the tactics and the measurements should be at a team level, a functional level, or individual level. Because marketing is judged on marketing initiatives, whereas human resources and finance can't be measured by the same initiatives. So when you're building out your strategic plan and building out your measurements and your tactics, it's important to realize that you have to create cascading goals with the different parts of your organization. So you can look at it again here, and again, it's included as part of the toolkit. So as I mentioned, each area of the function will have different measurements and different ways to track success. So it's important not to judge one person by someone else's activities or measurements. So now we're getting into the big picture versus practical application and some more tangible how-tos. So when you're looking at all of these different areas that you can improve, where can you add value and make changes? What can you do to improve the organizational capacity, to improve learning, to help customers, and then to make money on the bottom line? Every organization has, this is called the value chain, basically 4 key parts to the business. Operations and production, these two things are typically cost driven. This is how you run your business on the back end. This is how you actually make what you offer. The value is in the middle. Again, whether you're government, you're for-profit, or not-for-profit, you have this value chain, whether you know it or not. Marketing is how you tell people about what you're doing, and sales and service is how you actually exchange the value that you're creating to the customer. So each one of these areas has different line items, and by either improving the operations or production and decreasing the cost, or improving the marketing and sales and increasing the revenue, you can create more value. A really, really useful tool for this is called the business model canvas. So it looks like the word got chopped off here. And this is open source. You can take a look at it. And it really breaks down the 9 components of a business as to in what you do. There's several different models of this, the innovation map and so on. But looking at the key partners, the key activities, the key resources, the value proposition, what do you actually offer for people, the relationships you have, the marketing channels, customer segments, who actually buys what you have, where do you make money, and what costs you money. But again, going back to this, you can look at each individual component of this and find areas for improvement. And at the end of the day, find more ways to offer value to your customer. So if you just can focus on a few areas, what parts of your supply chain create the most value in your business? What are the revenue drivers to be increased? And what are the cost drivers to be decreased? Another area that's very important as part of strategic planning implementation is what skills or resources do you need to make your strategy a success? So you know where you are now and you know where you want to go. What's missing? So taking a real critical evaluation of what you need to do next is important on actually executing? Do you need more people? Do you need more money? Do you need more exposure? What gaps are there that are going to stop you or that are in between where you are now and where you want to go? So, other implementation constraints to identify. Time. Okay, well, we're against the gun to get this done. What do we need to do? Budgets. We don't have enough money to put this together right now. Or we only have so much money to do X, Y, and Z. Well, what else can we do in the meantime? Human resources. You might have skills gaps and you're missing some key employees. What do you need to do and what plans do you need to put in place to bridge those gaps? Technology. You might have this grandiose plan to be a global supplier of whatever goods that you sell, but if you don't have the technology or the systems to execute on that, then that's the first step in moving forward on your strategy. What other constraints exist in your organization when it comes to a strategic plan? If you don't identify the constraints, then you're going to fail basically from day one because you have these things that you just didn't identify and you can't figure out why it's not working. All of your constraints have to be built into your strategic plan, at least internally as part of your operations plan, to know what you need to address and what you need to fix to move forward. Other risks to good implementation. So leadership, if you have poor leadership or subpar leadership, then the execution won't be done as well as possible. Communicating internally, not only letting everybody in the organization know what the plans are, but letting everybody know how the plan is going. You know, are you behind schedule? Are you ahead of schedule? Are you running out of money? Are you not supported enough? These are things that everybody needs to feel that they can do and really needs to be done. Otherwise, your plan will not be successful. And they do say that most plans are unsuccessful, unfortunately. Resources. You have this great plan, but nobody gave you enough money to execute on it. So whose fault is it? And it'll be your fault if you don't say anything to people. And then finally, buy-in. Reason that we at SME Strategy encourage involving as many people in the process as possible is that employees do want to feel like they contribute to the strategic plan itself. They want to feel like they have meaningful work, and they want to make sure that what they're coming into work to do every day is making a difference. So in one of the other videos, we'll talk about the factors that contribute to a successful plan. But do understand the difference between getting buy-in into your plan and your change management strategy, and the difference between pushing a plan on somebody versus them pulling it towards themselves and getting involved. We'll talk a bit about change management as well later, but do realize the difference between telling people what they're going to do and offering opportunities for them to get engaged to create the vision and their future. So Harvard Business Review interviewed 26,000 people at 31 companies to determine what traits align with strong execution. You can see the article here. It's a 2008 article. But number one is everybody has a good idea for the decisions and actions for which he or she is responsible. So that means that everybody knows how they're contributing to the plan, and it's very clearly laid out and communicated. And that's why we have that